the conviction and sentencing of Gerhardus Burger, does it represent a semblance, a modicum of justice for Steinhoff for you?
I mean, there have been convictions overseas of individuals who are far closer to this case. I do think what is perhaps not fantastic is that this is somebody who he was really an absolute bit player in this soap opera. He was absolutely on the fringes. You wouldn't have heard of him, and it's quite the fact that the perpetrator, the mastermind, Markus Jooste himself, will never stand trial for this is a missed opportunity. And you could say that had the prosecutors acted earlier, somewhere in the last 7 years, it might have been different.
Just tell us who Gerhardus Burger is in this sordid affair of Steinhoff.
So he was a long-term family friend of Markus Jooste's. They'd known each other for 30 years. His children worked at Steinhoff, and he was somebody to whom Markus Jooste sent a message shortly before Steinhoff collapsed, saying, "There's bad stuff about to come out. Sell your shares and delete this message and don't tell anyone." And that classically fits the definition of insider trading. If you tip off somebody that share price of a company is going to go up or down based upon your inside knowledge that nobody else has, that's insider trading. So in this case, Dr. Burger was able to cut his losses and make sure that he wasn't subject to the same, massive 50%, plunge in Steinhoff's share price that everyone else had to sustain. So it's insider trading, which is one of the easier charges to prove in this case. I mean, the Steinhoff case is a massive 106 billion rand fraud that is so complicated, but this was a fairly easy case, a fairly easy part of the case to prove.
Any idea then, Rob, how far this takes us, this conviction, as you say, for insider trading? How closer does it take us to the core, the nucleus of the Steinhoff fraud in terms of pursuing the other more complex and complicated cases, bearing in mind, of course, that Markus Jooste is no longer around to face the music?
Well, I mean, in some sense, we've complained about the authorities doing nothing for the last 7 years. So, it would be churlish to say that this is inconsequential. I think conviction in the Steinhoff case is important. It's important to send a message to people in the financial community that they can't just break the rules without consequence. So that's important in itself. It doesn't get to the locus of the Steinhoff fraud, which was the more complicated way in which they fiddled the profit numbers of Steinhoff's balance sheet and income statement to make it look like this immensely profitable, fantastic company, when actually it wasn't, when there were many parts of it making losses. So it doesn't deal with the real essence of the Steinhoff fraud. But there are people like Steinhoff who have been arrested who will go on trial and have to answer to those charges. Steinhoff was meant to be arrested the same day as Markus Jooste and got the same notice to appear in court in March. And it was the day after Markus Jooste got that message that he then committed suicide. So I do think that it will go to court, and I think it will be heard, this particular case. But like I said, the fact that Jooste himself isn't going to be in the dock is will certainly leave some immense hole in this particular story.
Lastly, Rob, there's the criminal sanctions and that process that's playing itself out. But what about the other sanctions, such as the civil, lawsuits and penalties and the likes? How much have we seen by way of getting some justice through those avenues?
Well, what happened is that, certain people along the way did pay money towards Steinhoff, which then distributed that amongst people who lost money. So, for example, the auditors agreed to pay some amount of money. There were cases lodged against Jooste to repay the bonuses and salaries he got. And I assume that case, even though he fought it, will still be proceeded against his estate. So I do think that there has been efforts by Steinhoff's current management, the guys who took over and had to clean up the mess to some extent, to mop it all up and see what they could get back for people who lost lots of money. Having said that, the thing about the business sector and shares in an exchange is that, it's risk and reward. If you're going to make these massive profits, then when a company collapses, that's how it should be. There should be risk and reward. So, people can't expect to get back everything they've lost. But it was an immense fraud that I think defined the country's corporate sector for a long time, and the ramifications are still being felt. So it's important that there is accountability, and that's what happened here, even though it's not quite as we would want.